Welcome to episode 3. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Sparks and I coach people one-to-one in spiritual coaching, and I also do online classes. So this week I wanted to talk about something which I feel many of us are considering, especially at the beginning of a new year, which is goal setting, right? So how many of you, if you're like me, set goals, you have great intentions, you have an idea of what you want your year to look like, but we don't quite get there. It somehow falls short, right? We have the idea of what it looks like and how exciting it's going to be, but the reality is very, very different. And quite often we can find that every January we're setting the same goals, right? It's like the age-old diet starts on Monday. So today I want to talk about, from a spiritual perspective, what is the way to set goals and how can we ensure that, one, our goals are clear and accurate, but two, more importantly, how do we get there, right? How do we sustain ourselves? It's a little bit like if you imagine that you were driving your car from Glasgow to London, right? But there's only one problem, is that you only put in enough petrol that's going to take you to Motherwell, right? If you don't have enough desire and enough gas in the car, you're not going to get there, right? So you need enough in the tank, and that's really probably our starting point. So, why do we set goals, right? Is it important to set goals as a starting point? I would say yes, right? I don't really believe in the really solid New Year's resolutions, but I think that periodically it's good to consider where it is that we are and where it is that we want to get to, right? And goal setting can be really powerful in taking us to that next stage in our lives. Where I think most people fall short is that we just come up with goals and ideas like from the top of our head, right? I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to start a cake business, right? I'm going to do whatever, right? And we don't really give it enough thought as to the deeper question, which is, why is it I want it, right? What is my true desire? And for me, if you think about it, desire, I always say to my clients right at the beginning, is the essence of the human being. When you wake up in the morning, you desire something. We all want something, right? So you might wake up in the morning, you desire coffee. You desire another hour of sleep. You desire nobody to talk to you in the train on the way into work, right? We desire something. And so I think for me, before you set the goal, I think there's two aspects to it, right? The first step is to write down, what is it that I truly desire? So I remember, as an example, one time I was coaching this guy, and his big thing was he wanted a hot blonde wife, right? That was his only goal. But when we started to look into it, I was like, what if your soulmate's got dark hair, right? There's nothing wrong with wanting a hot blonde wife, but what are you really looking for? And when we dug into it, the true desire underneath that of what he was looking for from a spiritual perspective, the real desire was love and connection and somebody who could depend on and all of those good things, right? So I think it starts with the deeper question of, what is my desire? What is the true desire of what it is I'm looking for? I think when we start there and we start to ask those questions of, okay, why do I want this, right? I think also it's a good thing to link to, what are my strengths? Right? So if you're an unbelievable personal trainer, why are you starting a cake business? Right? Does it make sense what you're looking for, right? So I think we've got to look at, like, what gifts and talents and natural attributes do we have? What lights us up, right? And then match the desires that we have to that, right? So I think it starts with figuring out, what do you want? And the deeper question of, as we talked about, why do you want it? And then the next aspect from there is, I always think it's good to do a to-be list, right? We talk a lot about to-do lists, right? But actually what's great is to write down, a year from now, who do I want to be, right? So it might be that I want to be a really great friend with a strong social circle. Okay, so now the goal, we can go back a little bit, if that's what you want to be in a year, is that the desire is connection, is to make meaningful friendships. So now the goal should be maybe something more practical, like, I'm going to make time for my friends once a month. We're going to arrange something in the diary and we're going to take turns in organising who it is that arranges the event. Now you have a clear desire. Now you have a clear idea of who you want to be at the end of the year, and you have a practical goal, which is not too difficult. You're not saying we're going to meet every 2 days, which is probably unrealistic, right? And now you have a solid goal. And I think what that means is that then when you're not feeling it, you don't feel like being consistent, you can always go back to what is it I truly want? Who is it I want to be? What's going to satisfy me at the end of this year? Which will motivate you to continue, right? Fulfilling the desire at the beginning is a bit like that example we use where we're putting petrol in the car. Think about it when you visualize like what you really want from life. All of a sudden you're energized, you feel excited, you're creating the vessel that can start to hold that sort of energy for the year. But actually what most of us do is just throw goals about willy-nilly without really thinking it through. You're not sustaining enough energy for you to get there, right? So I think for me, when it comes to goal setting, it's also really helpful to write them down. I think to have it on paper. And secondly is to work with someone else, right? So that could be working with a spiritual coach. It could just be a really close friend or family member that you maybe work together on your goals and then you keep each other accountable, right? And you have regular checkpoints. So how often are you going to look at it? So it could be that maybe once a fortnight, once a month, you're going to revisit it. You'll meet your friend for a coffee. You do it in your spiritual coaching sessions and you look and say, you know what? Where am I at? Where is my progress? And I think what we want to avoid is this need for perfection, right? So if we get to March and we've missed a month, okay, great. You've still got many more months to go in the year, right? So I think that writing it down and having somebody to work through the goals with is really important as well. So we want to add that spiritual lens to goal setting. To summarize, it seems very simple, but we want to add structure, is understand your true desire, write your to-be list of who you want to be at the end of the year, and then work backwards to make a practical, natural kind of goal setting structure that you can do, right? Don't make it too frequent, right? And then the last part of it is to have somebody that keeps you accountable and regular checkpoints. And for sure, if you implement this, it's going to give you the fuel to allow you to achieve your goals.